High above the Liri Valley stood an ancient monastery that had survived earthquakes, empires, and 1,000 years of war. In 1944, it faced something different: total war from the sky. Allied commanders believed this hilltop abbey might be the key to unlocking Rome. What followed was months of brutal fighting, a bombing that shocked the world, and a question that still lingers: did destroying Monte Cassino help win the battle, or make it far worse? By early 1944, the Allied campaign in Italy had stalled. After landing in southern Italy in 1943 and pushing north, British and American forces encountered a carefully prepared German defensive system known as the Gustav Line. It stretched across the Italian peninsula, anchored on rivers, ridges, and fortified high ground. At its heart stood Monte Cassino. Monte Cassino was not just another hill. It dominated the entrance to the Liri Valley, the most direct route to Rome. Control that valley, and the road to the Italian capital lay open. Fail here, and the Allied advance would remain frozen in mud, rain, and attrition. The stakes were strategic and political. Rome was not only a military objective, it was a symbol. Capturing it would demonstrate momentum to Allied populations and to occupied Europe. But here's the problem: the Germans had chosen their ground carefully. The Abbey of Monte Cassino, founded in the 6th century by Saint Benedict, sat atop a steep, rocky peak. Below it lay the town of Cassino, already battered by artillery. Rivers like the Rapido and Garigliano cut across the landscape, turning the valley floor into a defensive maze. Every approach funneled attackers into exposed killing zones. German forces, including elements of the 1st Parachute Division, dug into surrounding heights and constructed interlocking fields of fire. According to the U.S. Army's official history of the Italian campaign, the terrain itself became the defenders' greatest weapon. But here's where the controversy begins. In January 1944, Allied assaults attempted to break through the Gustav Line. American forces crossed the Rapido River under intense fire and suffered heavy losses. British and French units attacked along neighboring sectors, also facing stubborn resistance. The Abbey loomed above it all. Rumors spread that German observers were using the monastery to direct artillery fire. Some Allied commanders believed that as long as the Abbey stood intact, it provided a perfect vantage point over the battlefield. Others, including some intelligence officers, argued there was no firm evidence that Germans occupied it. This debate reached the highest levels of command. Lieutenant General Mark Clark and General Bernard Freiberg faced mounting pressure. Casualties were rising. The front was not moving. Soldiers were pinned down by machine gun nests and mortar fire from the slopes below the monastery. And then came the decision. On February 15, 1944, hundreds of Allied bombers dropped tons of explosives on the Abbey. The ancient structure was reduced to rubble in a matter of hours. It was one of the most controversial airstrikes of the European war. But here's the twist. Prior to the bombing, German troops had largely avoided occupying the monastery itself, respecting its religious and cultural significance. After it was destroyed, the ruins provided ideal defensive cover. German paratroopers moved into the shattered stone walls and turned the debris into a fortress. Instead of removing a suspected observation post, the bombing may have created a stronger defensive position. The battle intensified. Allied infantry attempted to seize the heights in the days following the airstrike. New Zealand and Indian divisions launched determined assaults up steep slopes under relentless fire. Rain turned the ground to mud. Rubble choked the approaches. Progress was measured in yards, then lost again. And still, the Gustav Line held. Each failed assault increased pressure on Allied leadership. Every delay prolonged the campaign in Italy, tying down divisions that might otherwise be used in preparations for the invasion of France. The clock was ticking toward the summer of 1944. But what truly made Monte Cassino so hard to crack wasn't just the Abbey, it was the layered defensive system stretching across ridgelines and river crossings. Even if the monastery fell, the valley below remained a killing ground. By March 1944, 3 major Allied attempts had failed. Casualties mounted into the tens of thousands. The Abbey lay in ruins, but the German line was unbroken. And that raises the critical question heading into the next phase. If bombing the Abbey did not unlock the road to Rome, what would? Because by May 1944, the Allies were preparing something different. A coordinated assault that would either shatter the Gustav Line or confirm that Monte Cassino had become an immovable wall. The battle for Monte Cassino had already lasted months. 3 assaults had failed. The Abbey was rubble. The Gustav Line still stood. Rome remained out of reach. Now the Allies prepared Operation Diadem. This time, the plan was broader and more coordinated. Instead of hammering one narrow sector, Allied commanders massed forces across a wide front. British, American, French, Polish, and other Allied units would attack simultaneously, stretching German reserves thin. The stakes were higher than ever. A breakthrough here would not only open the road to Rome, it would potentially collapse the entire German position in central Italy. Operation Diadem began on May 11, 1944 with a massive artillery barrage. Thousands of guns opened fire along the front. Under cover of darkness, infantry units crossed rivers and advanced toward fortified ridges. Here's the difference. The attack was synchronized and relentless. French Expeditionary Corps units advanced through mountainous terrain previously considered impassable, outflanking parts of the Gustav Line. British and Canadian forces pressed in the Liri Valley. Meanwhile, Polish II Corps targeted the heights around the Abbey itself. The fighting was ferocious. German paratroopers defended the ruins with discipline and determination. Every shattered wall became a strong point. Every crater concealed a machine gun. The rubble that once symbolized heritage now defined a battlefield. But slowly, pressure mounted. By mid-May, Allied forces had broken through in key sectors. German commanders faced the risk of encirclement. Holding Monte Cassino at all costs no longer made strategic sense if the entire line collapsed. On May 18, 1944, Polish troops raised their flag over the ruins of the Abbey. The symbolic stronghold had fallen. And here's the payoff. Within weeks, German forces withdrew northward. On June 4, 1944, Allied troops entered Rome. It was the first Axis capital to fall. Yet the victory came at a price. The prolonged struggle at Monte Cassino cost tens of thousands of casualties on both sides. It also sparked a lasting debate among historians and military professionals. Did bombing the Abbey shorten the battle, or prolong it? Official German post-war accounts and Allied analyses suggest that the ruins provided better defensive cover than the intact structure would have. The U.S. Army Center of Military History notes that the decision remains one of the most controversial tactical choices of the Italian campaign. Strategically, the fall of Monte Cassino demonstrated the difficulty of frontal assaults against well-prepared defensive lines in mountainous terrain. It underscored the importance of coordination, maneuver, and logistics. Operation Diadem succeeded not because of a single dramatic strike, but because of cumulative pressure across the entire front. There is also a legacy beyond tactics. The destruction of the Abbey shocked cultural institutions worldwide. After the war, Monte Cassino was painstakingly reconstructed, stone by stone, restoring a monument that had stood for nearly 1,400 years. The battle reminds us that war is not fought only over territory, but over symbols, history, and memory. Monte Cassino did not decide the entire war in Europe, but it revealed the brutal cost of breaking a defensive line anchored on terrain, and how a single decision, like the bombing of a monastery, can shape both the battlefield and historical judgment for generations. If the Abbey had never been bombed, would the battle have unfolded differently? That question still divides historians today. If you found this deep dive into Monte Cassino valuable, consider how one command decision can echo far beyond its moment. Share your thoughts below. Was the bombing necessary or a tragic mistake? And if you want more carefully researched World War II history that examines the turning points behind the headlines, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next campaign analysis.